Thanks, Masty. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the Center for Death Penalty Litigation's Kirk Osborn Awards reception. I am Terica Redfield Gansey, and I have the pleasure of serving as Vice Chair of the Board of Directors. Our chair, Aiken Adepoju, is unable to be here because he's out of the country, but he sends his love to you all. I flew up here this afternoon from Atlanta because I don't get to Durham often, but when I do, I'm here for this event. And it's a very special event for me because I get to be in the company of Gretchen, who is leading and has led this organization through some very turbulent times. Times that remind me of the Twilight Zone, but she has led and continues to lead with a lot of force. She is the same person today that she was when I met her more than 20 years ago. And I have been, in my own role, very inspired by the way that she leads. She's humble, but she's also a strong force and extremely smart, and I'm so thankful to you, Gretchen, for the way that you lead this organization. I would also like to recognize the staff. If you are a member of the Center for Death Penalty Litigation staff, would you please wave your hand really wildly so that people can recognize who you are? I think it's very important that we recognize the people who are doing the work at the Center for Death Penalty Litigation because they are purpose-driven. They didn't come to the Center for Death Penalty Litigation to have a job. They came because they believed in the mission, and they also believed in what they were able to do to move the needle in the direction that we wanted to go. So thank you for everything that you are doing every day to move our cause forward. And I also want to thank all of you. I was at an event recently when they mentioned that donations and support for nonprofits is down more now than in the past 20 years. And so we do not take it for granted that you have made donations, that you are sponsoring, that you have bought tickets to be at this event because you are making our work possible. And I want to especially recognize some of our highest level donors, our board chair, Aiken Adepoju, Gary Duzik, and Cindy Elliott, and J and K Ferguson. Thank you so much for investing in the work that we are doing in North Carolina, but not just in North Carolina, but across this country, because when I think about the Center for Death Penalty Litigation, I think of trailblazers. When I was here 20 years ago, the CDPL in this community were leaders nationally in the movement to end the death penalty, but also in the movement to challenge racial injustice. And so I'm really, really proud of this powerful community. You, many of you who are doing the work that the CDPL does as well, you are partnering with us and helping to move the needle forward. And I look forward to all of the amazing things that we are going to do for justice together. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for everything that you have done and will do to support this cause.
Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm Gretchen Engel. I'm the Executive Director of CDPL. And on behalf of the staff in particular and also the board, I want to thank you for coming. Your support means so much to us as we do the difficult job of challenging injustice and representing people who are condemned to death. I'm excited tonight to honor Marilyn Ozer and the late Bill Massengale, two giants in our community. Two people very different in manner, who combined were a powerful force and are a powerful force for justice. There was the gregarious, never met a stranger, always with a joke, always with a story, Bill. There's the quieter, more serious Marilyn with pretty sharp wit of her own. I had barely started at the Resource Center when Marilyn and Bill won a remand from the United States Supreme Court in a death penalty case. A remand from the United States Supreme Court? How often does that happen? As it turns out, over the last 30 years in North Carolina capital cases, maybe one other time. They're extraordinary. There's so many of Bill and Marilyn's cases I could tell you about. They won cases for people who suffered from severe mental illness, who had critical evidence go missing in their case through the carelessness of prosecution and law enforcement. Clients who had unreliable evidence admitted, who were forced to go to trial when the counsel at trial was saying, we're not ready, we need to do more investigation of important evidence. And not just death penalty cases. Ronnie Long, some of you may know, was exonerated in 2020 after a stunning 44 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Now, he had amazing lawyers in the Fourth Circuit who persuaded that court, and also our Attorney General, that the racism and prosecutorial misconduct in that case demanded Mr. Long's freedom. But many don't know that their case rested on a foundation built by Marilyn and Bill, who represented Mr. Long in state court. What's extraordinary about their work is their dedication and their creativity. Bill and Marilyn were among the first capital post-conviction attorneys to routinely file motions for appropriate relief on direct appeal. Now, if that terminology is unfamiliar, don't worry about it. Just trust me that Bill and Marilyn were innovative path breakers whose example others followed to the benefit of many, many more clients. Now, sometimes these efforts didn't pan out, but they delayed executions. And we know that where there's life, there is hope. And then sometimes they hit it big. The proof of that is Mike Ryan, who's here tonight. You're going to hear more about him later. But Mike spent close to 7 years on death row, despite convincing evidence of his innocence, and another 6 years in pretrial detention before Bill and Marilyn's tenacious work paid off and he won his freedom. He's here with us tonight with his fiancee, Wendy Ash, because of Marilyn and Bill. Now, Bill and Marilyn are an extraordinary example of the team approach. They rightly get a lot of credit for the victory in Mike Ryan's case. But Lisa Dubs was a big part of that case as well. And Bill and Marilyn had the foresight to think, we need help with the DNA evidence. And if we win this, we're going to need a fiery lawyer to take on the retrial. And they had no ego invested in this. They said, we need to enlist Lisa to help. And what a powerful team they made. That was their way, training law students. There are lawyers here who have been doing public defense in far-flung parts of the state who trained under Bill and Marilyn. Bill and Marilyn came to CDPL all the time. They never thought, oh, we know it all. They did know it all, but they still came to CDPL and asked questions and picked the brains of people like Ken Rose and others on our staff. Always they wanted to welcome people into our community. In one of their clemency cases, they enlisted writers, Alan Gerganis and Doris Betts, who spoke out in favor of commutation. Bill and Marilyn were also the people who connected the attorneys litigating lethal injection with Dr. Charles Vanderhorst, the UNC professor of medicine, who persuaded the medical board to adopt a policy that physician participation in lethal injection was unethical. There was a lot of litigation about that ended up adding many years of life to many of our clients, and is one of the key reasons why North Carolina has not had an execution in more than 17 years. I think you should applaud for that. Yeah. Bill and Marilyn had a deep connection with their clients. I was at the prison with them on occasion, joined them in the C2 booths there. And I was always amazed at the warmth and curiosity, the humor, and the sage counsel they brought to those encounters. I miss Bill a lot. We lost him much too soon, too suddenly. In March of 2005, after the state executed their client, Bugs Powell, Marilyn sent me an email describing that night. It ended with the line, "Barbarism cloaked in Gothic. If there's anything more worth fighting for as a lawyer, I don't know what it is." I'm so grateful for Bill and Marilyn's inspiration and teaching, for their perseverance and passion. I'm so glad that Marilyn is soldiering on, is still in the fight, serving as an appellate consultant to trial lawyers, still representing people on death row, still representing people in criminal appeals and challenging excessive sentences. Marilyn and Bill are truly deserving recipients of the 2023 CDPL Osborn Award. Please give it up. We're going to hear first from Sally Massengale, Bill's very beloved and loving wife, and then Marilyn will have a few words for us.
Thank you, Gretchen, and thank you, Marilyn, and everyone here. I'm going to read a letter that I received from Bill's client on death row that came after he died. Dear Sally, I was just told the news of your husband's passing and am more surprised than I thought by its effect on me than I thought I would be. The tears that have fallen from my eyes are those I would have shed for any true friend. My grandma has a saying, "Why lie to you when I can't lie to God?" I say that to say this: I did not want to like Bill. At this point, I've had some who were just going through the motions. Lawyers come and go, and as far as I can see, he and Marilyn, of course, would be my last. Why should they care? With Grandma's words in mind, I believe he felt the same way about me at first, not wanting to like me. I can't say what effect he had on my case, good or bad. Could he have done more? Who knows? I want you to know he made this death row inmate feel loved, as you have also, not coddled or anything. I will never lessen the weight of my burden because a human being must be held accountable for their actions. Otherwise, what's the point of even making rules or laws? I do understand mercy, though. God showed me mercy through your husband, through his understanding, not his agreement with my actions or my beliefs, but with his willingness to even try. I was just blessed that he understood. I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I just want to say he will be missed. A corrections officer just came in here to say a few kind words about Bill, and that is Miss Carrington behind me. She says the last time she saw him, he was outside waving to her through the glass. He always had an easy smile on his face, kinda silly-like, but just a nice guy. Then I held up the letter, this one I'm writing, and she just smiled. You see, your husband will live on. The seeds of who he was couldn't help but be planted deep in the minds of all those he came in contact with. If there is any, and I mean anything, I can do, just let me know, 'cause despite my best efforts, he snuck past my defenses and became family. God bless you. Sincerely, Saran Hooks. P.S. Sorry about the penmanship. This visitation booth desk is the worst. Thank you.
I'm probably better known as Bill's law partner, so I'm bringing the spirit of Bill with me tonight. Anyone who practiced with Bill knows that he always wanted to bring a prop with him, whatever court, from district court up to the Supreme Court, but we tried real hard to keep him from doing it at the Supreme Court. My favorite prop from Bill was when he filled the Orange County District Courtroom with golden retrievers. Every bench was full of golden retrievers, and that made the News and Observer. So in Bill's spirit, I brought a prop. This is Ronnie Fry. He was executed 22 years ago, and it was because his attorney was drunk 24/7. We had an expert that said he was never legally able to drive. And the way he got appointed to Ronnie's case and to other capital cases was because his wife was a good friend of a judge. They went to the same country club, so the judge would support this lawyer by appointing him to capital cases. So I'm bringing this prop tonight because I want you all to know that it's not me that has done this, it's all of you. And I am so grateful to all of you because this is no longer possible. All the people that work for the Indigent Defense Services to be established have made an incredible difference. Before Indigent Defense Services, it was almost impossible to get money for experts. I traveled out to Camden County 3 times in front of 3 different judges begging for a psychiatrist, and they all said no. That doesn't happen anymore because of the work everyone did to establish Indigent Defense Services and to keep it going. The other difference, of course, is the judges don't appoint people that belong to their country clubs anymore. There's a roster, and that has made an incredible difference. And then there are all of you who are now working every day to make sure this never happens again. And nothing makes me happier to know that Ronnie Fry will never happen again. So that's my prop A. My prop B, come on over here. This is Mike Ryan. We met Mike in 2010 when he was on death row. We were able, with the help of an incredible number of people, to get him off death row. And then, as Gretchen said, Lisa Dubs got him out of jail completely. So this spring, he walked out of prison.
Thank you. Thank you.
And he's here with his fiancee, Wendy Ash. Wendy, please stand. Wendy was our secret weapon when we had the MAR hearing. I think the judge fell in love with her, so thank you, Wendy. And I want to thank Staples Hughes. I think Staples is here because when we came up with the crazy idea of the motion for appropriate relief, Staples went along with us, backed it, helped us with us, made sure we got all the funding we needed. And I don't think he gets the recognition that he should get. I'm not sure who else is here. Jackie Gonzalez has been with Mike for a long time now. She was the investigator. So I know if Bill were here, he'd be thanking all of you for all the work you do. And I'm so pleased to be in this company of wonderful people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's now time for the Messenger of Light Award, an award that we created especially for its recipient, Patricia Carrington. I met Officer Carrington more than 20 years ago when she became the face of Central Prison's Visitation Department. At first, it was a respectful, professional face, and in a very short time, it was a friendly face, a warm and kind face. I've asked a number of clients over the years, is there anyone working here at Central Prison who's more compassionate and kind than Ms. Carrington? The uniform answer is, no. Some of you, like Bill and Marilyn, have been at the prison at 2 a.m. when your client was executed. And many of you, thank goodness, and thank you for your advocacy, your activism, your zealous representation that have led to no executions for more than 17 years in this state. You have not had to go through this. So many of us have not had to. But as bad as that experience of an execution was, I remember thinking after watching the state kill my client, I'm just glad I don't have to work at that prison, right? Is there a harder job than going into a place that cages human beings? Sometimes for the express purpose of killing them, sometimes for life, always in a sterile, cold, monochromatic, clanging place where hope is hard to find. The answer to that seems to be no. And yet Patricia Carrington resisted the inhumanity of her surroundings and brought light and hope and love to this otherwise lonely, crushing place. We work on cases that sit at the apex of a very adversarial system. We see things, murders, trauma in our clients' lives, racism, injustice, that elicit strong emotions in us, and over time can become corrosive. When we need an example of how not to lose our own humanity, we can think of Officer Carrington. Our clients know about this event. They wanted to be part of it. And they put together this beautiful book that I'm going to show you. That's here. And I want to share with you a few of their words. So let me just show you this. They put little notes in here. You're going to get this. Here are some of the sentiments of the people who live on death row. Thank you so much for giving so much help to my family and friends. Thank you for treating them with so much respect. You were always a joy to be around. Thank you so much for being such a positive influence in our lives. You were a true blessing and a loved person that cared so much for us. Are you sensing a theme? Yeah. I appreciate you so much for showing lots of love and kindness toward my family and friends. Thank you for how you went above and beyond to work with our families so that we could stay connected. I'd also like to thank you for not looking down on me. I always felt a sense of dignity in your presence. Is there anything to add to that? Clearly no. I'm so honored to bestow the 2023 CDPL Messenger of Light Award to a dear, dear person, Patricia Carrington. All right, you go ahead.
I'm not a speaker.
You can say whatever.
Thank everyone. I don't know what to say. I told them I'm not a public speaker. I hate speaking, but I do want to say thank you for everybody that nominated me for this award. Working at the prison was not always an easy job. My philosophy was to always try to treat everybody the way you want to be treated. I wanted to treat people the way I would want to be treated if I was the one that was walking in that door as a family. And the other thing I learned from day one is that if you give respect, you get respect. That was one of the things I always found out with the offenders that was there. I never had any problems because I always treated them like I would want, to be treated myself. And one of the guys on death row one time told me, says, they don't like officers like you. And I said, why? They said, because you treat us like we're somebody. And I said, well, you are, aren't you? And from that day on, as I never had a problem with anyone. So I'm not going to stay up here because I don't like talking in front of a group. I just want to thank each and every one of you for nominating me for this award. Thank you.
There are even nicer things that I didn't read to you that I saved for Miss Carrington. So in a few minutes, we'll hear from our special guest, best-selling novelist John Grisham. And before I introduce him, I'd like to recognize a number of other special people in our midst. You've heard about Mike Ryan. We are blessed to have him here, along with two other men who were wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death in North Carolina and are now free. If Ed Chapman and Alfred Rivera, if you could wave your hands, we are so gratified to have you. Mike is living in Florida and helping other people who have recently come home from prison. Ed and Alfred are part of the North Carolina Coalition for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. All three of them are powerful testaments to how much all of our work matters. I also want to recognize April Barber, who's here. There's April. April was sent to prison for crimes committed when she was a teenager, and thanks to many attorneys here tonight, and April herself, who never gave up on herself and her vision to be a mother to her son. Governor Cooper commuted her sentences in March of 2022. She works as a healthcare aide and advocates for others still in prison. We're so happy to have her here tonight. I also want to recognize two people who are not here. Since our last gathering for an Osborn event, we've lost two wonderful Capitol defense attorneys, Marge Shardella and Mike Untie, who represented scores of Capitol clients, and we miss them and hold them in our hearts, Mike Untie and Marge Shardella. John Grisham, of course, is a household name, having written nearly 50 books. 37 of them were consecutive #1 bestsellers. Many went on to be blockbuster films. He's won the Harper Lee Prize for Legal Fiction, not once, but twice, and has been honored by the Library of Congress. He serves on the board of two nonprofits that advocate for people who are incarcerated and people who are for wrongly convicted. John was born in Arkansas and grew up in Mississippi, where he went to college, to law school, and served in the House of Representatives. He's described his upbringing in a very conservative Baptist environment. He was raised to think that the death penalty had its origins in the Bible and was the right thing to do. But when he started to do research for his books, he spoke with a death row chaplain who had been with a condemned man before his execution. And over time, he changed his mind. We're so grateful to John for explaining to a broad audience the deep-seated problems in our criminal punishment system, including wrongful convictions, junk science, and racism. And we're very grateful to have him speak to us tonight. John Grisham.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I drove all the way from Chapel Hill. We spend a lot of time in Chapel Hill. We have a daughter in Raleigh with grandkids, and so we're in this area a lot. My wife was born in Raleigh, so I do have some pretty strong credentials for North Carolina. We're down here all the time. We're involved in both communities. We live in Charlottesville, Virginia. We really enjoy we're very active in politics. And for us, a typical election day, we get up and we go vote in our little county precinct outside of Charlottesville, near our farm. And then we drive down to Chapel Hill for a nice lunch. Then we vote in the Chapel Hill East precinct just down the street. And then when we're done with a nice lunch and voting, we go back to Charlottesville for dinner, and we vote in the downtown precinct in Charlottesville. And this is after we mailed in our absentee ballots to Mississippi. So we really enjoy politics and take it real serious. Is Brandon Garrett here? He's a professor of law at Duke. He's not here. He invited me. I mean, Chris, you serious? Chris, he's not here? Where is he? 6 weeks ago, I get this nice email from Brandon. I met him at UVA Law School 15 years ago on some Innocence Project cases. He's a rock star law professor. Really admire the guy. And we go back and forth, seeing each other occasionally. The last time he was at a fundraiser at our house in Chapel Hill for Sherry Beasley, last year, I guess 2 years ago, and I couldn't wait to see him tonight. He invited me to come down here. I'm here because of Brandon Garrett, and the guy's a no-show. I put the word out to Brandon. I'm really ticked off right now, okay? I have a tremendous amount of respect for what you do. I appreciate what you do. I know what you do. I've been there. I've seen it. I've been on the Innocence Project board for the past 15 years. I've worked with a lot of innocence groups, innocence lawyers, nonprofit groups, death penalty lawyers, and also big firm pro bono lawyers. And I know the countless hours you put in to these cases. They're very difficult to win. They're arduous. You often lose. It's very disheartening. It can also be very rewarding. But I understand what you go through, and I appreciate it, and I respect you a great deal. I have great admiration for what you do. I flirted with being a death penalty lawyer a long time ago. I finished law school 40 years ago at Ole Miss, and when I finished, I didn't have a job. I hadn't really looked for one because I knew I was going to go back to my hometown in Mississippi, not far from Memphis, and open my own little office. I had clerked with a couple of law firms in town. I was not impressed with their work. I felt like they would not realize my full potential as a lawyer. I couldn't fit with those firms, so I could do it myself. So I rented a little small space on Main Street, hung out my shingle, and declared myself ready to sue. I was the new gunslinger in town with no ammo, no guns, no clients, no money, didn't have a secretary. But I was in business. Back in those days in our little county, it was too poor to have a full-time public defender's office. So for the criminal cases, the judges would kind of dole out the court appointments for the indigent cases. And because the older lawyers had done it when they were young, we were expected to do it because we were rookies. And I had no problem with that. I wanted to be in the courtroom. I had done very well in mock trial competitions and moot court competitions in law school. And I would often skip class my last year in law school to go to federal court in Oxford to watch a good lawyer try a case. I loved being in the courtroom. And my dream was to be a small town lawyer, but one who had big cases and could make a lot of money. And I had some really good mentors in the area, real old-fashioned trial lawyers who could take any case from the facts all the way to a successful jury verdict. That was my dream. I wanted to be in the courtroom. I volunteered for almost all of the court-appointed indigent cases I could get. They didn't pay hardly anything, but I had no other clients. I had no other income. I needed whatever fees the county would pay. And so I was always in court. The first year out of law school, I tried 2 murder cases, non-capital, by myself to successful verdicts, won both cases, and it really whetted my appetite for that kind of trial work. And I thought I was on the right track to be a trial lawyer. And then something happened. There was a horrible murder in our county, a terrible murder. And back then, when there was a bad case, a rape or a murder, you learn, don't answer the phone, avoid the judge, don't go to the courthouse, leave town if necessary. If you don't want the appointment, get out of town. And this crime was so bad, it involved a man that my family knew who owned a country grocery store A guy walks in one night high on crack with a sawed-off shotgun. He robbed the guy, and he took some beer, and he could have left and run away, but instead he pulled the trigger, and it created this horrendous crime. And it was front page in the Memphis newspapers, and we all fled. We locked our doors, took the phones off the hook. Nobody wanted the case. There were two lawyers next door to me, two young lawyers. They'd been out of law school about 5 years. We were all street hustlers. We were all street lawyers. We were all, trying to do the same thing. And these guys volunteered for the case. It was their first ever capital case. We thought they were crazy, but they were serious about doing it. They took the case, and it paid almost nothing back then. It was a few $1,000 for capital murder. It was nothing. And they worked their butts off. They filed every motion on time. They learned, they studied, they talked to capital defense lawyers, they talked to the judges. They did whatever they could. They worked nonstop, and before long they were in way over their heads. They were broke. They had no other clients. They were borrowing money to stay afloat. Both marriages were on the rocks, and these guys were committed to this client. They wished they hadn't taken the case, but it was too late. They went to trial. I actually helped them pick the jury quietly from the sidelines. I was next door looking in because I knew a lot of people in the area. Two ladies I knew who ended up on the jury. There was a bad set of facts, and the jury came back real fast with a guilty verdict. Their goal was to try and save his life, and they had tons of mitigation. They worked and worked so hard to save the guy's life. The jury came back fast with a death verdict, and these guys were devastated. By then, they were totally emotional basket cases. They had no other clients. The case almost destroyed them. They went through the appellate process, and then when it got to the habeas a few years later, the first claim was ineffective assistance of counsel, which just crushed them. They couldn't believe they were getting sued for that. One guy cracked up, had a complete nervous breakdown, left the profession, divorced his wife, and we never saw him again. The other guy hung on for a while. I would go to his office next door to have coffee, and we were good friends by then. He had a room where he had all of the Wiley. This guy's name was Wiley, the Wiley case, the defendant, all the boxes for all of his stuff. And as it went through the habeas and all the federal appeals, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of boxes just for one capital murder case. And it dawned on me how much work went into one case, the work that you guys put in to a death penalty case. Late in the game, Wiley was resentenced, and spared the death penalty, and so I guess it was a happy ending. My friend hung on for 30 years and managed to survive, but he wished 1,000 times he had never taken the case. I learned a lesson from that. Fast forward about 12 years, I was on death row in Mississippi researching a book called The Chamber, and by then I wasn't practicing law anymore. I was writing books. I'd had a good change of career in my life, and I'd been to death row many times. I'd talked to the guards and the administrators, and I spent time with the executioner. Spent time with the chaplain, as Gretchen mentioned, one afternoon, and talked about the death penalty and changed my mind about that. And one day I said, can I talk to Wiley? Wiley's still here. He'd been there for 14 years, I guess. And so Wiley and I met in a room, visitation room, and when we talked for a long time, and he was this big old lovable guy. He said, he said, I don't even remember doing that. I was hopped up on cocaine and crack, and he said it was the dumbest thing. And we talked about it. He was genuinely repentant, remorseful, and he was really a fun guy he was not the same person he was when he did this crime. He was a totally different person. By then, he was still scheduled to be executed. I told him I knew the family of his victim, and if he wanted me to, I'd be happy to, relay a message. And he said that would be great. Would you please tell the Turner family that I know they can never forgive me, but I am genuinely sorry for what I did. I ruined their lives, and I ruined my life, and I just want them to know I'm sorry for what I did. And I said, sure. And I did that. I talked to two people in the family, and they were pleased to hear him say that. Made them feel better. The family was split over the execution. For those times back then, it was remarkable. But half the family wanted him executed, the other half did not. But it was a real moment for them to know that from death row, word had reached them that the killer was truly repentant. Going back to the days when I hung out in courtrooms all the time, one judge called me a court rat. You know, you've got gym rats and ramp rats and all. He called me a court rat because I was always in court. After the Wiley trial, I was in court one day watching another terrible case involving the rape and sexual assault of a little girl. And she was about to testify, and her testimony was going to be so horrible. The judge, my mentor, the judge I loved, did something I've never seen before or since. He cleared the courtroom, everybody out of the courtroom, and the courtroom was packed. The victim had a big family, and there was a lot of tension, a lot of police in the courtroom. And the judge said, everybody out, lock the doors, put the deputies at the door, nobody's in the courtroom. As an officer of the court, I could stay. I was a court rat. They brought the little girl in to testify against this really bad guy who had just been paroled for sexual assault. He was a nasty character. And she was 12 years old, and she began testifying. And she testified for about an hour. And there were times during her testimony there was not a dry eye in the courtroom. The jurors were weeping. The judge was hiding his eyes. The prosecutor, who could cry on demand, certainly crying. My buddy, the defense lawyer, was covering his face. The only person who wasn't crying was a defendant who never showed any remorse for anything. And it was, for 1 hour, she took us through every emotion known to the human soul, whether it was bitter hatred or love for this child or revenge, everything you can possibly think of. We went through that with her as she testified. And after an hour, she was very brave at times. She was very fragile at times. She broke down, and finally the judge said, that's enough. And she broke down, and he said, that's it. He called a recess. And the courtroom, those of us who were in the jury fled to their room. I got out of the courtroom. I couldn't wait to get out of the courthouse. So I went down the back door, the back stairway, ran to my car. I got to my car, and I realized I'd left my briefcase in the courtroom. I was so rattled. So I went back in the back door, up the back staircase, through a back door, and went into the courtroom. And there was a defendant sitting by himself at the table with two deputies fairly close by, but nobody else was there. He wasn't going anywhere. And I walked within 5 feet of him, and I had this thought. If that had been my daughter, give me a gun and let me do what I want to do, and look at that same jury and say, what are you going to do to me now for doing something that you all want to do? It was just pure revenge moment. And that's how awful the moment was. I got my stuff, I got out of the courtroom. I became obsessed with this idea of the story, a courtroom drama about a father's revenge. And I started writing my first novel. I had never written fiction before, and that's how A Time to Kill was started, and that's how this career got started, because I was in that courtroom one day and saw something that changed my life. So I'm lucky that happened. I'm happy to be here tonight helping out beautiful causes like this and helping out people who believe in justice, who want to fight injustice, and believe that one day the death penalty will be a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you so much again for being here. I think there's might be still some food and wine, and please enjoy and try to stay dry. Sorry about that. We held off for a while. We didn't have a hurricane, so I'm chalking this in the win column. Wonderful to see everyone. Safe travels home.